Rain fell on the streets of Little Italy like a cold, relentless verdict. Droplets hammered against the cobblestones, creating a symphony of urban melancholy that filled every corner of Manhattan on this autumn evening. Neon lights from restaurants reflected off the wet sidewalks, painting the street in shades of red and gold. There was something old world about this corner of New York, something that reminded people of times when honor and loyalty meant more than money, at least in theory. Ristorante Venezia stood proudly on the corner of Mulberry Street and Grand Street, a 3-story brick building whose facade had witnessed more history than most books. Inside, dim lighting prevailed. Candles flickered on white tablecloths, and the aroma of garlic and fresh basil mingled with the scent of expensive wine. This wasn't an ordinary restaurant. Everyone who knew this part of the city understood that Venezia was a place where business was conducted, not the legal kind. Domenico Valenti sat at a table in the farthest corner of the dining room, his back to the wall, never to the exit. That was a basic survival rule in his world. He was 39 years old, but his eyes seemed to belong to someone much older, someone who had seen too much and lost even more. Dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, white shirt without a single wrinkle, hair slicked back with surgical precision, everything about him screamed control and authority. Across from him sat 3 men, his closest associates, people who had known him for years. Marco Tesoro, his right hand, a 40-year-old man with sharp facial features and eyes that always seemed to evaluate every situation. Next to him was Vincent Caruso, head of security, a massive man with scars on his hands that told their own stories, and Tony Battaglia, younger, barely 30, but already hardened by the harsh reality of their world. The meeting was coming to an end. They had been discussing territories, influence, money from new investments in Brooklyn. Everything was coded, of course. No specific words that could be used against them. In their world, every wall could have ears. Everything is arranged, Marco said, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. The shipment will arrive on Tuesday as we planned. Domenico nodded, his face remaining impassive. Make sure there are no complications. The last situation cost us too much. Understood, Don Valenti, Marco replied, using the title with respect but also with a note of formality that was always present between them, even after so many years. Waiters moved through the room like ghosts, quietly, efficiently, trying to remain invisible. Every employee at Venezia knew who sat at the back tables. They knew it was better not to see too much, not hear too much, not speak at all. It was an unspoken agreement that protected them all. Among them was Leah Moretti, 25 years old, a petite figure in a black dress and white apron, hair pulled back into an impeccable bun. She had been working at Venezia for only 3 months, but she had already learned the basic rules. Don't ask questions. Don't look too long. Do your job and go home. She needed this job more than anyone could guess. Her mother, Teresa, was in the hospital after her 3rd chemotherapy treatment. Bills were piling up like mountains, and insurance covered barely half the costs. Leah worked double shifts, Venezia in the evenings, a coffee shop downtown from dawn. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. Every dollar went toward her mother's treatment. Every cent was counted. That night, everything changed in a split second. It was 10 minutes past 11 when Domenico rose from the table. His associates stood immediately like a well-trained unit. Handshakes were exchanged, brief nods. Transaction complete. Business concluded. Leah stood by the bar polishing wine glasses when she saw Domenico heading toward the exit. His security guards, 2 powerful men in dark suits, walked ahead of him, scanning the room with their eyes. Everyone in the restaurant froze for a moment. It was like watching a funeral procession pass by, respect mixed with fear. That's when Leah remembered something she had seen an hour earlier. She had been taking out the trash to the back of the restaurant, to the narrow alley where the dumpsters stood. It was cold, her breath forming small clouds of vapor. She had noticed then a man in navy blue coveralls doing something under a black Mercedes parked at the curb. He had a flashlight in his mouth and his hands were moving quickly beneath the vehicle. At that moment, she hadn't thought much of it. Maybe he was a mechanic. Maybe something had broken down. But something about his movements was suspicious. The way he looked around nervously, the way he quickly walked away when he heard her footsteps. And now, watching Domenico Valenti leaving the restaurant, all the puzzle pieces fell into a terrifying hole. Leah's heart began to race. Her mind worked at maximum speed. What if? What if that wasn't a mechanic? What if that man? She couldn't finish the thought. Instinct took control. Before she realized what she was doing, her legs were already moving. The wine glass fell from her hand, shattering into tiny pieces on the wooden floor. The restaurant manager turned around, shocked, but Leah was already running toward the door. "Wait!" she shouted, running through the main dining room, passing astonished guests and waiters. "Please, wait!" Domenico was already outside, the rain falling harder now. His security guards were opening the doors of the black Mercedes when they heard the scream behind them. In a split second, both guards drew their weapons, shielding Domenico with their bodies. It was a trained reflex. Protect the boss at all costs. Domenico himself reached under his jacket, his hand resting on a concealed weapon. Leah burst out of the restaurant, soaked to the bone within seconds. Her hair broke free from its bun, black mascara streaming gently down her cheeks. She looked like a drowning person trying to reach shore. "Don't start the engine," she shouted, her voice breaking with desperation. "Please, don't get in the car." Vincent Caruso, the head of security, took a step forward, his massive silhouette blocking Domenico. "Back away. Now." But Domenico raised his hand, stopping him. Something in this girl's eyes was genuine. It wasn't the cold, calculated gaze of an assassin. This was pure, unfiltered panic. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low, controlled but with a note of curiosity. Leah Moretti. I work inside," she gasped, trying to catch her breath. I saw a man by your car, an hour ago. He was doing something underneath. I thought he was a mechanic, but something was wrong. The way he looked around, please, check before you." Domenico studied her intensely. In his line of work, he had learned to read people like open books. Liars had specific patterns. The way they avoided eye contact, the way their bodies tensed, micro-expressions that betrayed their true intentions. This girl was terrified, but she wasn't a liar, which didn't mean she was innocent. "Take her," he ordered, pointing to one of the SUVs parked nearby. "What? No!" Leah tried to pull away, but the guards were too strong. "Let me go. I didn't do anything wrong." "That's precisely why you'll stay alive," Domenico replied coolly, already walking away. "If you're an innocent waitress who had the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, you'll be safe. If you're something more..." He left the sentence unfinished, but the threat was clear. Vincent was already calling a special number, their explosives expert, a specialist who needed to come immediately to disarm whatever might be there. Marco coordinated the evacuation of the area, under the guise of a gas leak, so as not to raise suspicions. Within 10 minutes, the area was deserted. Ristorante Venezia closed, the street blocked off. As if by magic, no one asked questions. That was the beauty and horror of having influence in this city. Leah sat in the back seat of the SUV between two security guards who looked like they were carved from granite. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. What had just happened? Half an hour ago, her biggest worry was whether she would collect enough tips to cover her mother's next prescription. Now she was a prisoner of one of the most feared men in New York. Through the tinted window, she watched as the bomb expert worked under Domenico's car. He was there for almost 20 minutes, his movements precise and cautious. Finally, he emerged, holding the neutralized device in a special container. He approached Domenico, who stood under an umbrella that Vincent held for him. They spoke quietly, but Leah could see the expressions on their faces in the light of the street lamps. The expert was clearly shaken. After another 5 minutes, Domenico entered the SUV. He sat in front next to the driver, but turned to look at Leah. "C4, military-grade explosive," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Enough to turn the car and everything within a 10-meter radius into dust. Professional installation, timer connected to the ignition system. If I had turned the key, well, we wouldn't be here." Leah felt nauseous. 10 meters. The restaurant was no more than 8 meters from the parked car. "How many people were inside?" she whispered. "At Venezia? About 30 guests plus staff." Domenico continued to observe her closely. "All those lives were saved because you decided to scream on the street. So, you believe me?" "I didn't say that." His tone remained neutral. "But I believe you're not part of this attack. No one who wanted to eliminate me would warn me about a device they themselves installed. That would be illogical. So can I go?" "No." The word hung in the air like a guillotine. "Why not?" Leah's voice broke with frustration. Domenico pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Because whoever these people are who did this, they know your name. They mention you in their message, which means you're part of this, whether you wish it or not. He handed her the paper. Leah read it with trembling hands, her eyes widening with each word. Villarosa? What is that? I don't understand any of this. You don't need to understand, Domenico replied, taking the paper back. You just need to survive, and the only way to ensure that is to keep you where I can watch you. This is kidnapping. This is protection. Domenico nodded to the driver, who immediately started the engine. Do you have family in the city? The question was so unexpected that Leah answered instinctively. My mother, she's in the hospital, and my younger brother, he lives in Queens. Names? Why do you want names? This time there was no request in his voice. Teresa Moretti, Mount Sinai Hospital, Oncology Ward. My brother is Daniel Moretti. He's 17, goes to Lincoln High School. Domenico pulled out his phone, typed a quick message. Within a minute, he received a response. Your mother will have protection. Discreet, but she'll be safe. Your brother, too. No one will touch them as long as you cooperate. This is blackmail. This is survival. Domenico finally turned away, ending the conversation. Welcome to my world, Miss Moretti. I hope it was worth screaming. The SUV pulled away, plunging into the night. The streets of Manhattan slipped past the window. Wet, dark, full of secrets. Leah rested her head against the cold glass, her mind spinning. What had she just done? One impulsive scream, and now she was entangled in something she couldn't understand. People with scars. An explosive device. A mysterious message. Villarosa. Whatever that was. And then there was something else. Something that was beginning to dawn on her slowly, terrifyingly. If these people knew her name, if they mentioned her in the message, this wasn't random. It wasn't by chance that she worked at Ristorante Venezia. It wasn't by chance that she was outside exactly when she saw the man by the car. Someone had placed her there. But why? Her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. She pulled it out with a trembling hand, expecting a message from a friend or coworker. Instead, she saw an unknown number. The message was short, just one sentence. You should have stayed quiet. Below the text was a photo. Her brother Danny, leaving school, backpack on his shoulder, unaware he was being photographed. Leah felt the world around her begin to spin. The guards beside her didn't notice her reaction, or pretended not to. But Domenico, watching her in the side mirror, noticed everything. Problem? He asked quietly. Leah looked at him, their eyes meeting in the mirror. In that moment, she understood something fundamental. There was no turning back. Whatever was happening, whatever Villarosa meant, whatever these people were planning, she was already part of it. And the only person who could protect her now was the man everyone feared. I got a message, she whispered, handing him the phone through the gap between the seats. Domenico took the phone, read the message, saw the photo. His jaw clenched slightly, the only sign of anger. Vincent, he said calmly to his head of security. Double the team on the girl's brother immediately. Already dispatched, boss. Domenico returned the phone to Leah. From this moment, you don't answer any messages. You don't call anyone without my permission. Understand? Leah nodded, too shaken to object. Where are we going? She finally asked. Safe house. Queens. There we can talk without interruptions. The rest of the journey passed in silence. Leah watched the city through the window. Her city, a place she had known her whole life, suddenly seemed foreign and dangerous. Domenico, meanwhile, studied the note he had received with the device. Villarosa, a name he had tried to bury under layers of power and control. A place that represented everything he had lost, everyone he had loved. His sister, Juliana, only 12 years old when she perished in the flames. And now someone was using that memory as a weapon. And this waitress, this trembling, terrified girl, was the key. The question was, key to what? When the SUV stopped in front of an unremarkable brownstone in Queens, only drizzle was falling. Domenico got out first, surveying the street with the skill of someone who always assumes the worst. Leah was escorted out by the guards, not roughly but firmly. They entered inside, climbed the stairs to the second floor. The apartment was Spartan but clean. Clearly an apartment prepared for such situations. Sit, Domenico ordered, pointing to the couch. Leah sat feeling like a defendant in a courtroom. Domenico stood before her, arms crossed. Vincent closed the door, standing guard. Now, Domenico began, his voice calm but fire burning in his eyes. You're going to tell me everything. From the beginning, How you got the job at Venezia. Who recommended you. Who you talked to. What you saw. Everything. But I really don't know anything. We'll see about that, he interrupted. Because if there's even the slightest chance you're lying, that you're part of all this, I won't have a choice. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Leah took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart, and she began to speak. She told him about losing her previous job at a diner in Brooklyn when it closed down, about the mounting medical bills as her mother's condition worsened, about seeing the help wanted sign at Venezia 3 months ago and practically begging the manager Giuseppe for a chance. Giuseppe Lombardi, Domenico interrupted. Describe him. Older man, maybe 65, gray hair, mustache, always wore a vest, even in summer. He was kind to me, gave me the evening shifts because they paid better with tips. Domenico nodded to Vincent, who immediately pulled out his phone and began typing notes. Who else worked there? Who did you interact with regularly? The other servers. Maria. She's been there for years. Carlos, the bartender. Antonio and his wife ran the kitchen. The hostess, Sophia. She was new like me. Started maybe a month before I did. Sophia. Domenico's eyes narrowed. Describe her. Mid-20s, blonde, very pretty. Spoke with a slight accent, maybe Eastern European. She was always nice, but kept to herself mostly. Was she working tonight? Leah thought back. No, actually. She called in sick this afternoon. Giuseppe was annoyed because we were short-staffed. Domenico and Vincent exchanged glances. Convenient, Marco muttered from the corner where he stood. Tell me about the man you saw. Every detail, no matter how small. Leah closed her eyes, trying to picture the scene. It was around 10 o'clock. I took the trash out back. The alley was dark except for one security light. I saw someone crouched by your car, at least I assume it was yours now. Black Mercedes, expensive looking. What was he wearing? Navy coveralls like a mechanic or maintenance worker. Dark baseball cap. He had the flashlight in his mouth because both hands were working under the car. Did he see you? Yes. When I opened the door, it made a noise. He looked up and I saw his face for just a second before he turned away. That's when I noticed the scar. Describe the scar again. Exactly. It ran from his left eyebrow to his temple, thick, raised, like an old injury that didn't heal well, maybe 3 inches long. Domenico stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. Rain continued to fall, creating rivulets on the glass. Boss? Vincent prompted. I know who he is, Domenico said quietly. Sergei Volkov, former Russian military, now works as a freelance specialist. The scar came from shrapnel in Chechnya. He's one of the best in the business. If Volkov's involved, this isn't amateur hour, Marco said gravely. Someone paid serious money. Domenico turned back to Leah. Did the man say anything? Make any sounds? No, nothing. He just left. Quickly. He walked to the end of the alley and got into a dark van. I couldn't see the license plate. What time exactly was this? Maybe 10:15? I went back inside and got busy with customers. I didn't think about it again until... She trailed off. Until you saw me leaving, Domenico finished. And something made you put it together. It was the way he moved. Furtive, nervous. It didn't feel right even then. And when I saw you heading to the car, it just clicked. I didn't think, I just ran. Domenico studied her for a long moment. Everything she said aligned with what his own instincts told him. She was telling the truth, or at least what she believed to be the truth. Miss Moretti, he said finally, his tone slightly softer. You saved approximately 40 lives tonight, including mine. That's not something I take lightly. Then let me go home, Leah pleaded. I've told you everything I know. You don't understand. Domenico pulled out the note again, holding it so she could see. This message mentions you specifically. The girl knows more than she realizes. They want me to think you have information, which means they'll come for you, either to get that information or to eliminate you as a liability. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. He folded the note back into his pocket. Tell me about Villarosa. Have you ever heard that name before? Maybe in passing from a customer or anyone? Leah shook her head frantically. Never, I swear. What is it? Domenico was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of old pain. Villarosa was an orphanage in Brooklyn near Prospect Park. It burned down 16 years ago. 14 children perished. My sister was one of them. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. I'm so sorry, Leah whispered. The investigation ruled it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said. I was 23. already working my way up in the organization. I used every resource I had to investigate privately. I knew it wasn't an accident, but I could never prove it, never found out who was responsible. And now someone is using it to threaten you, Leah said, understanding dawning. Not just threaten, they're telling me they know the truth, that after 16 years, someone is finally ready to reveal what really happened that night. Domenico's hands clenched into fists. The question is why now? And what do they want? Vincent's phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression darkening. Boss, we've got a problem. Giuseppe Lombardi left his apartment 20 minutes ago. My team followed him to a warehouse in Red Hook. He met with 2 unidentified individuals. Giuseppe? Leah couldn't believe it. No, he's just a restaurant manager. He's been at Venezia for decades. Everyone has secrets, Miss Moretti, Marco said coldly. Everyone can be bought or threatened. Domenico made a decision. Bring him in, quietly. I want to know who he met and what they discussed. On it. Vincent stepped out of the room, phone already at his ear. Leah felt tears threatening to spill. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling. Her safe job, her simple life, all of it built on quicksand. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now you stay here, Domenico replied. This apartment is secure. There's food in the kitchen, clothes in the bedroom that should fit you. A guard will be outside the door at all times. For how long? Until I figure out what's really going on. Who's behind this, what they want. He moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Moretti, I want you to think very carefully. Is there anything else, anything at all from the past few weeks or months that seemed unusual? Conversations you overheard? Customers who stood out, anything? Leah racked her brain, trying to think through the exhaustion and fear. There was one thing. About 2 weeks ago, a man came in asking for me specifically. Said he was a friend of my father's, wanted to help with my mother's medical bills. Domenico turned sharply. And? I told him I don't accept charity. My father died when I was 12 and I didn't recognize the man. He left his card, said to call if I changed my mind. I threw it away. Describe him. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Well-dressed, expensive suit. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Very polite. Spoke perfect English, but I thought I detected an accent underneath. Maybe Italian. Age? 50s, maybe early 60s. Domenico's jaw tightened. Did he give a name? Antonio something. I don't remember the last name. Antonio Russo, Domenico said, and the name seemed to fill the room with tension. You know him? Everyone in my world knows him. He's a legitimate businessman on the surface. Real estate development, construction contracts, city council connections. But underneath, Domenico didn't finish the sentence. Underneath what? Leah pressed. Underneath, he's the man who owned the property where Villa Rosa stood. The man who stood to profit when that land was cleared for development. Domenico's voice was ice. The man I've suspected for 16 years but could never touch because he's too well protected, too well connected. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that terrified Leah. He approached me before any of this. He was setting something up. He was positioning you, Domenico corrected. Making contact, establishing a connection, so that when this happened, when you saved my life, I would have questions about you, doubts. Or, he paused, thinking, or what? Or so that I would protect you, bring you into my circle, which means you're not just a pawn, Miss Moretti. You're bait. Bait for what? For me. Domenico's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression growing darker. He hung up without saying a word. What is it? Marco asked. My second-in-command, Thomas Ricci. He's been found, staged to look like an accident. Domenico's voice was hollow. He knew about Villa Rosa. He was helping me investigate. The implications hung heavy in the air. Whoever was behind this wasn't just threatening Domenico. They were systematically removing anyone who might help him. I need to go, Domenico said, heading for the door. Marco, you stay with her. No one in or out except our people. Wait, Leah called out. He stopped. Why are you really protecting me? If I'm bait, wouldn't it be easier to let them take you? Domenico finished. Perhaps, but I don't sacrifice innocent people. And despite everything, Miss Moretti, I believe you are innocent. You were used, manipulated, placed in position like a chess piece. But you chose to run toward danger to save lives. That means something. What does it mean? It means you're worth protecting. He opened the door. Try to rest. Tomorrow we figure out our next move. After he left, Leah sat in the quiet apartment, Marco standing silent guard by the door. She pulled out her phone. No new threatening messages, thank God. But she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. One decision, one impulsive moment of screaming a warning, and her entire life had been turned upside down. She thought about her mother in the hospital, unaware of the danger, her brother Danny, going about his normal teenage life while people with cameras followed him, all because she had tried to do the right thing. The rain continued to fall outside, and somewhere in the city, Domenico Valenti was preparing for war, and Leah Moretti, ordinary waitress, was somehow at the center of it all. She walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping city. Somewhere out there, people were planning, plotting, moving pieces on a board she couldn't see. But she could feel the storm coming, and she knew that tonight was only the beginning. Dawn broke over Queens with a hesitant gray light that did little to chase away the shadows. Leah hadn't slept. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the explosive device under Domenico's car. Imagined the devastation if she hadn't spoken up. She saw her brother's face in that threatening photograph, her mother vulnerable in a hospital bed. The safe-house apartment was quiet except for the occasional creak of floorboards as Marco shifted position by the door. He hadn't spoken to her since Domenico left. Just stood there like a statue, arms crossed, watching. Leah sat curled on the couch, still wearing her waitress uniform from the night before. The black dress was wrinkled now, her apron discarded on the coffee table. She felt trapped between two worlds, her ordinary life of double shifts and medical bills, and this dark underworld of secrets and threats that she'd stumbled into. As the room gradually lightened, she heard sounds from outside, car doors closing, muffled voices, then footsteps on the stairs. The door opened and Domenico entered, looking somehow even more intimidating in the morning light. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark slacks and a charcoal gray sweater that made him look less like a businessman and more like what he truly was. Behind him came Vincent, carrying a laptop and several folders. "Miss Moretti," Domenico said, his tone all business. "We need to talk, really talk." Marco brought in chairs from the small dining area. They arranged themselves around the coffee table, Domenico sitting across from Leah, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He hadn't slept either. "First things first," Domenico said, sliding a photograph across the table. "Is this the man who approached you 2 weeks ago?" Leah picked up the photo. It showed a distinguished-looking man in his late 50s, silver-streaked hair, confident smile, the same man who had come to Venezia claiming to be her father's friend. "Yes, that's him." "Who is he really?" "Antonio Russo, one of the most successful real estate developers in New York, also one of the most ruthless." Domenico pulled out more photographs. "He's been acquiring properties across Brooklyn and Manhattan for 20 years. Builds luxury condos, commercial spaces, makes hundreds of millions. What does he want with me? That's what we're trying to figure out." Vincent opened the laptop, turning it so Leah could see. "We pulled records going back to 2009, the year Villa Rosa burned. Russo owned the property. The insurance payout was substantial, and within 6 months he'd sold the land to a development corporation for triple what he'd paid for it." Leah studied the documents on screen. "So he profited from the tragedy?" "Significantly." Domenico's voice was hard. "The orphanage was struggling financially. Russo had made offers to buy the property before the incident. All rejected. Then conveniently, a fire destroys the building. Investigation rules it accidental. Case closed. Russo walks away wealthy. You think he caused it?" Leah asked, then immediately wished she hadn't. The look in Domenico's eyes was answer enough. "I've thought so for 16 years. But thinking and proving are very different things. Russo has connections everywhere. Police, fire department, city officials. Even if I'd found evidence, it would have disappeared. So why bring it up now? Why involve me?" "That," Domenico said, leaning forward, "is the question we need to answer. Let's establish a timeline. 3 months ago, you applied for a job at Venezia. Giuseppe Lombardi hired you. 2 weeks ago, Antonio Russo approached you there. Last night, someone planted an explosive under my car. You saved my life, and a message was left mentioning Villa Rosa and you specifically." "Giuseppe," Leah said, her stomach sinking. "You said your people followed him last night. What did they find?" Vincent pulled up security footage on the laptop. This was taken at a warehouse in Red Hook around midnight. The grainy video showed Giuseppe Lombardi, the kindly restaurant manager Leah thought she knew, entering a large building. 2 figures waited inside. Their faces weren't clear in the low light, but their body language suggested an intense conversation. "We couldn't get audio?" Vincent admitted. But Giuseppe was there for 37 minutes. When he left, he seemed agitated, kept looking over his shoulder. Where is he now? Leah asked. We have people watching his apartment. He went straight home after the meeting. He hasn't left since. Domenico stood, walking to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. People leaving for work, kids heading to school. Normal life continuing, unaware of the chess game being played in their midst. Here's what I think is happening, he said without turning around. Someone is orchestrating this. They positioned you at Venezia knowing I conduct business there. They made sure you saw Volkov planting the device. They wanted you to warn me. But why? Leah's head was spinning. If they wanted you eliminated, why arrange for me to stop it? Because, Domenico turned to face her, they don't want me gone. They want me paranoid, suspicious, vulnerable. They want me focused on Villa Rosa, on the past. They're preparing something bigger, and this is just the opening move. Marco spoke up for the first time that morning. The message said justice is coming. That's not the language of a business rival. That's personal. Exactly. Domenico began pacing, his mind clearly working through possibilities. Someone who knew Giuliana. Someone who cares about what happened at Villa Rosa. But who? The other families of the victims? None of them have the resources or connections to pull this off. Leah's phone buzzed on the table. Everyone tensed. She looked at the screen. Another unknown number. Don't answer it, Domenico ordered. But what if? Don't. He held out his hand. Let me see. Leah handed him the phone. A new message had appeared. Good morning, Leah. I hope you slept well. Your mother's treatment continues at Mount Sinai, floor 7, room 714. The nurse who checks on her every morning at 8 a.m. is very dedicated. Her name is Patricia. She has 3 children of her own. It would be unfortunate if anything disrupted these routines. Below the text was a photograph, time-stamped from 20 minutes ago, showing Leah's mother asleep in her hospital bed, completely unaware she was being watched. Leah felt her blood run cold. They're threatening my mother directly. Domenico's jaw clenched. He handed the phone to Vincent. Trace this, and triple the security at Mount Sinai. I want eyes on Teresa Moretti and every person who enters that room. Already on it, boss. Vincent was typing rapidly on his laptop. Leah stood abruptly, her emotions finally breaking through. This is insane. Yesterday I was worried about paying bills, and now there are people threatening my family, watching my mother in her hospital bed. Why? What could they possibly want from me? Information, Domenico said quietly. Or they think you have it. Sit down, Miss Moretti, please. Something in his tone made her comply. When she looked at him, she saw not the feared man from last night, but someone who understood exactly what she was feeling. Someone who had lost people he loved. Tell me about your father, he said, sitting back down across from her. The change of subject caught her off guard. My father? He died when I was 12. Heart condition. What does he have to? What was his name? Michael. Michael Moretti. He was a contractor, worked construction mostly. Domenico and Vincent exchanged glances. Where did he work? Which companies? I don't know, I was just a kid. Different sites around the city. He'd come home exhausted, covered in dust. Mom said he worked too hard. That's what probably caused his heart problems. Miss Moretti? Domenico's voice became gentle in a way that frightened her. Did your father ever mention working on a project in Brooklyn, near Prospect Park? Leah felt the air leave her lungs. Villa Rosa. You think my father worked on Villa Rosa? Vincent, pull up the construction records from 2008. The renovation work before the orphanage closed. Vincent's fingers flew across the keyboard. After a moment, he turned the laptop toward them. There, in a list of subcontractors, was the name. Michael Moretti. Electrical work. Oh my God, Leah whispered. My father did the wiring at Villa Rosa? The investigation blamed faulty electrical work for the fire, Domenico said carefully. Your father died 6 months after the incident. From what you said, a heart condition? That's what the doctor said. Sudden cardiac arrest. He was only 41. Leah, Domenico used her first name for the first time. What if your father's death wasn't natural? What if he knew something about the fire? What if Russo had him silenced? The room tilted. Leah gripped the edge of the couch, trying to breathe. No, he was just a contractor. He wouldn't have known anything about. But even as she said it, memories were surfacing. Her father in the weeks before he died becoming withdrawn. Coming home late, smelling like alcohol, which wasn't like him at all. Her mother arguing with him in hushed voices after Leah had gone to bed. And once she'd overheard him on the phone saying something that hadn't made sense at the time. I can't keep this quiet. Those children, I won't be able to live with myself. He knew, she said aloud, the realization crushing. My father knew the fire wasn't an accident. He was there, he did the electrical work. He would have known if someone had sabotaged it. And if Russo found out he was having second thoughts about staying quiet. Marco left the sentence unfinished. Tears streamed down Leah's face now. They took my father, and now they're using me. They positioned me at Venezia, because I'm Michael Moretti's daughter, because I'm connected to Villa Rosa through him. Domenico moved to sit beside her on the couch, not too close, respecting her space, but near enough to offer comfort. Listen to me. We don't know for certain what happened to your father, but if you're right, if he was silenced because he knew the truth, then you've been carrying evidence your whole life without knowing it. What evidence? I don't know anything. Memories, things he might have said, papers he might have kept. Your mother might know more than she realizes. Domenico's mind was clearly racing. That's why Russo approached you 2 weeks ago. He was testing you, seeing if you knew anything. When you rejected his offer, he moved to plan B, which was using you to get to me, making me suspicious of you, or making me protective of you. Either way, bringing us together, because together we might uncover what really happened 16 years ago. Vincent's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression darkening. Boss, we've got a situation. Giuseppe never went home last night. The apartment we were watching, it's not his. It belongs to his brother. The real Giuseppe Lombardi has been out of the country for 2 months, visiting family in Italy. The man at Venezia is an imposter, Marco said flatly. Domenico stood, fury barely contained. They replaced him, weeks ago probably. Set up the whole scenario. He turned to Leah. When did you say Sophia started working there? About a month before me. She called in sick last night. Convenient timing. Domenico pulled out his phone. Get me everything on Sophia. Full name, background, address. Now. While Vincent worked his contacts, Domenico continued pacing. They've been planning this for months. Replacing staff at Venezia, positioning you there. Setting up the threat to make me paranoid, but why? What's the endgame? Leah wiped her tears, her fear transforming into something else. Anger. These people had possibly taken her father, were threatening her mother and brother, had manipulated her entire life. You said Russo was at the meeting Giuseppe, or fake Giuseppe, attended last night. Who was the other person? Vincent pulled up the warehouse footage again, enhancing the image. We got a partial facial recognition match. Mikhail Petrov, Russian national, entered the country 3 weeks ago on a business visa. Associates include, he paused, Sergei Volkov, the man I saw under the car, Leah said. They're all connected, Domenico said. Russo, the Russians, the setup at Venezia. But there's still a piece missing. Who wrote the message? Who knows about Villa Rosa and cares enough to call it justice? A new text appeared on Leah's phone, which Vincent was still monitoring. This one made everyone in the room freeze. Domenico knows you're Michael Moretti's daughter now. Good. That's what we wanted. The truth about Villa Rosa will come out one way or another. Your father tried to do the right thing 16 years ago. He paid for his conscience. Will you? Or will you help us finish what he started? You have until tonight to decide. Come alone to Pier 47, Red Hook, 11 p.m. Or everyone you love pays the price. It's a trap, Marco said immediately. Obviously, Domenico replied. But it's also an opportunity. They want a meeting. They think they have leverage. They do have leverage, Leah said quietly. My family. Your family is protected. I have the best people watching them. Domenico studied the message again. They want you alone, which means they don't want me there. Why? Because whatever they're planning, you'd see through it, Vincent suggested. Or because I'm not the real target. Domenico looked at Leah with something almost like respect. They want to recruit you, turn you against me, tell you I'm the villain, that I was somehow involved in your father's death. Were you? Leah asked bluntly. No, I was 23 when Villa Rosa burned. I had no authority, no power. I was barely in the organization. His honesty was stark. I've spent 16 years trying to find out who killed my sister. If your father knew something and was silenced, then we're on the same side. Leah stood, walking to the window, where Domenico had stood earlier. The morning was fully bright now, people going about their lives. She thought about her mother, fighting for her life against illness. Her brother, trying to finish high school. All of them caught in a web they didn't understand. What if I go? She said. What if I meet with them? Find out what they want? Absolutely not, Domenico said firmly. Why not? They want to talk to me, tell me something. Maybe it's the truth about my father. Maybe it's information we need. Or maybe they plan to eliminate you the moment you step onto that pier. Then come with me, hidden watching. If it goes wrong, you can intervene. Domenico studied her carefully. You've changed since last night. When I first took you, you were terrified. Now you're planning strategy. Now I'm angry, Leah corrected. These people have manipulated my entire life. They might have taken my father. They're threatening my family. I want to know why. I want to know the truth. The truth can be painful, Miss Moretti. More painful than not knowing. She met his gaze steadily. You've been searching for answers about your sister for 16 years. I just found out I might have been lied to about my father's death my whole life. We both deserve the truth. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, she has a point. If they want a meeting, we can use it. Wire her up, have teams positioned nearby. Let them show their hand. It's too risky. Everything about this situation is risky, Leah argued. But sitting here waiting for their next move? That's not solving anything. You said I'm bait. Fine. Let's use that. Domenico was quiet for a long moment, weighing options. Finally, he nodded slowly. If we do this, we do it my way. Complete surveillance, teams in position, escape routes planned. At the first sign of danger, you follow my instructions exactly. Understood? Understood. And Miss Moretti? Domenico's expression was serious. Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Whatever we uncover about your father, about Villa Rosa, about any of this, you'll have to live with that knowledge. I already have to live with not knowing, Leah said. That's worse. Vincent closed his laptop. I'll start setting up the operation. We've got 12 hours to prepare. As the men began discussing logistics, equipment, positioning, backup plans, Leah returned to the window. Somewhere out there, people were watching her mother, tracking her brother, planning their next move. But now she wasn't just a victim. She was choosing to act. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother's nurse. A real one this time, based on the sender ID. Your mother is asking for you. She seems anxious. Can you visit today? Leah showed the message to Domenico. I need to see her. She's scared. She doesn't understand why there are suddenly security guards around. It's not safe. Please. Leah's voice broke slightly. She's fighting illness. She's alone. She's frightened. I can't let her think I've abandoned her. Just a short visit with your people watching. Please. Domenico considered, then nodded. 1 hour. Vincent and Marco will escort you. You don't leave their sight for a second. Thank you. 2 hours later, Leah stood outside room 714 at Mount Sinai Hospital, her heart pounding. Through the small window in the door, she could see her mother propped up in bed, looking small and frail in the hospital gown. She pushed open the door. Mom? Teresa Moretti's face lit up despite her obvious exhaustion. Leah, baby, I was so worried. The nurse said you couldn't come last night, and then there were all these new security people, and nobody would tell me why. Leah rushed to her bedside, hugging her carefully, mindful of the IV lines. I'm sorry, Mom. Everything's okay. The security is just a precaution. A precaution for what? Leah, what's going on? Her mother's eyes, still sharp despite the illness, studied her daughter's face. You look exhausted and frightened. Tell me the truth. Leah sat on the edge of the bed, holding her mother's hand. How much could she say? How much should she reveal? Mom, I need to ask you something about Dad. Teresa's expression shifted. Surprise, then sadness, then something Leah couldn't quite read. Your father? Sweetheart, why now? Did he ever talk about his work? Specifically about a project in Brooklyn? An orphanage called Villa Rosa? Her mother's grip on Leah's hand tightened. Where did you hear that name? So he did work there? Teresa was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. He did the electrical work. It was supposed to be a simple job. Update the wiring, bring everything up to code. But something happened. He came home one day, pale as death, shaking. Said he'd found something wrong with the installation. Someone had deliberately created fire hazards. Leah's breath caught. He knew it was sabotage. He reported it to his supervisor. But the supervisor told him to keep quiet, said it would be handled. Your father couldn't let it go. He went to the orphanage director, tried to warn them. A week later, Teresa's voice broke. The fire happened. 14 children died. Your father was devastated. He blamed himself for not doing more. Mom, what happened to Dad? Really? Teresa looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. I don't know for certain, but the night he died he'd gone to meet someone, said he had proof about the fire, evidence he'd kept. He was going to go to the authorities no matter what it cost him. He didn't come home. They found him in his truck. Heart attack, they said. But Leah, she paused, struggling with the words. His truck was parked 3 blocks from Antonio Russo's office building. The pieces all fell into place with devastating clarity. Why didn't you ever tell me? Leah asked. You were 12 years old. What could I say? That I suspected your father was silenced for trying to do the right thing. I had no proof, just suspicions, and I had you and Danny to protect. I kept quiet, tried to move on. Teresa gripped Leah's hand tighter. Why are you asking about this now? Leah, what have you gotten involved in? Before Leah could answer, her mother's eyes went wide, looking past her. Leah turned to see Domenico standing in the doorway, Vincent and Marco flanking him. Mrs. Moretti, Domenico said respectfully, stepping into the room. My name is Domenico Valenti. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation about Villa Rosa, your husband, and what really happened 16 years ago. Teresa stared at him, recognition dawning on her face. I know who you are. I've seen you in the newspapers. She looked at Leah, fear replacing surprise. Why is my daughter with you? Because, Domenico said gently, your husband tried to save my sister's life. And now, 16 years later, someone is using both our families to settle old scores. If we don't work together, we'll all lose people we love. Teresa looked between Domenico and her daughter, understanding the gravity of the situation. Michael kept records, she said finally, hidden in our old apartment, the one we lived in before he died. I never went back for them. I was too frightened. Where? Domenico asked. Brooklyn, above a bodega on 4th Avenue. The landlord probably cleaned it out years ago, but Michael had a hiding spot, behind the baseboard in the bedroom closet. He showed me once, made me promise to get it if anything happened to him. But I was too scared. Mom, it's okay, Leah soothed. No, it's not okay. I was a coward. I let them silence him and I just accepted it. To protect you children, I told myself. But maybe I was just protecting myself. Domenico pulled out his phone. Vincent, get a team to that address. Find those records. As Vincent left to coordinate, Domenico sat down across from Teresa's bed. Mrs. Moretti, your daughter is in danger because of what your husband knew. Tonight, someone wants to meet with her. They're using her, trying to manipulate events. But together, we might be able to finally get justice for your husband and for the children who died at Villa Rosa. What do you need from me? Teresa asked, and despite her weakened state, there was steel in her voice. The truth. Everything Michael told you. Every detail about Villa Rosa, about Antonio Russo, about what he discovered. Can you do that? Teresa nodded. And then, for the next hour, she told them everything. Her husband's growing paranoia in the weeks before his death, phone calls at odd hours, his certainty that the fire was murder, his collection of evidence. She described the last night she saw him alive, how he'd kissed her and Leah goodbye, promised everything would be okay once he delivered his proof to the district attorney. He never made it to the DA's office. By the time Teresa finished, even Domenico looked shaken. This wasn't just about real estate profits or mob rivalries. This was about cold, calculated murder of children and the systematic silencing of anyone who tried to expose it. Thank you, Domenico said quietly. You've given us more than you know. A text came through on Vincent's phone. He showed it to Domenico, whose expression became grim. What is it? Leah asked. They found your father's hiding spot. The records are still there. Photographs, documentation, everything. Domenico stood. We need to go. Mrs. Moretti, I promise you your daughter will be safe and your husband will finally get justice. As they prepared to leave, Teresa grabbed Leah's hand one more time. Your father was a good man. He tried to do the right thing. Whatever happens tonight, remember that. And remember he loved you more than anything. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. Be careful. Outside the hospital, as they walked to the SUV, Leah felt different. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, wasn't just a victim being moved around like a chess piece. She was Michael Moretti's daughter, and she was going to finish what he started. Mr. Valenti, she said as they drove back toward Queens. Domenico, he corrected. After everything, I think we're past formalities. Domenico, she tried the name, feeling strange saying it. Tonight, when I meet with these people, I want answers. Real ones. About my father, about your sister, about all of it. You'll get them, he promised. One way or another, this ends tonight. But as the SUV navigated through afternoon traffic, both of them knew that endings were rarely simple, and the most dangerous part of their story was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since that night on Pier 47, and the atmosphere in Domenico's primary office in Manhattan felt electric with anticipation. The space was nothing like the safe houses. This was the heart of his legitimate business empire, a corner office on the 42nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But today, those windows were covered with blinds, and the conference table was buried under stacks of documents, photographs, and legal briefs. Leah had become a fixture in this office, working alongside Domenico's team of lawyers and investigators. Her waitress uniform had been replaced by professional attire, though she still felt out of place among these sharp-suited attorneys. But she'd earned her spot at this table. Her father's evidence had been the keystone that held everything together. "We're ready," announced Margaret Chen, Domenico's lead attorney, a formidable woman in her 50s who had built a career prosecuting organized financial misconduct. "The district attorney has agreed to review our evidence package tomorrow morning at 9. "Will they actually prosecute?" David Torres asked from his seat near the window. His scars seemed less prominent now, or perhaps Leah had simply grown accustomed to them. Over the past weeks she'd heard his story so many times it felt like her own memory. "With what we have, they'd be fools not to," Margaret replied confidently. "We have financial records proving Russo paid for the faulty electrical work. We have your father's documentation, Leah, showing the specific sabotage. We have testimony from 3 other survivors besides David. We have the medical examiner who conducted the original autopsies, who's now willing to testify that he was pressured to rush his findings. And we have the piece that changes everything," Domenico added, sliding a photograph across the table. It showed a younger Antonio Russo shaking hands with Frank Castellano, the project supervisor who had disappeared. This was taken 2 days after the fire, at a private airfield in New Jersey. Our investigators found it in archived security footage. Vincent, who had been instrumental in tracking down that footage, continued the explanation. Castellano didn't disappear. He was relocated. New identity, new life in South America. All expenses paid by a shell company owned by Russo. We found the money trail. So Russo paid off the man who supervised the sabotage, then sent him away to keep him quiet, Marco summarized. "That's consciousness of guilt. That's conspiracy. That's murder," Leah said quietly, and the room fell silent. She was right. 14 counts of murder. 1 count for each child who had died, plus the suspicious death of her father, though proving that would be more difficult without a body to exhume and re-examine. "There's something else," Sophia spoke up from her position near the door. Over the past weeks she'd proven herself invaluable, her knowledge of surveillance and security systems helping them track Russo's movements. "Russo knows something is happening. He's been moving assets, transferring money to overseas accounts he's preparing to run." "How long do we have?" Domenico asked sharply. "Days, maybe. A week at most." Sophia pulled up surveillance photos on her laptop. "He's been meeting with his lawyers constantly. He knows someone is coming for him." "Then we move tomorrow," Domenico decided. "Margaret, make sure the DA has everything by 8 a.m. I want arrest warrants issued before Russo can board a plane." "What about Giuseppe Lombardi?" Leah asked. "The real one, I mean. And the man who impersonated him at Venezia?" "The real Giuseppe is cooperating fully," Vincent reported. "He was in Italy when he received a call from someone claiming to be his brother, saying there was a family emergency. By the time he realized something was wrong, his identity had already been stolen. The imposter was actually a man named Carlo Benedetti, hired by Russo to infiltrate the restaurant and monitor Domenico's movements. And Benedetti disappeared, probably got paid off and relocated like Castellano." Vincent's frustration was evident. "But we have enough without him. His role was just surveillance." Domenico stood, walking to the covered windows. "Tomorrow changes everything. Once the DA moves on Russo, this becomes public. Media will be everywhere. Your faces," he gestured to Leah and David, "will be on every news channel. Are you both prepared for that?" Leah exchanged glances with David. They'd discussed this scenario many times over the past weeks, but the reality of it felt different now that it was imminent. "I'm ready," David said firmly. "I've been waiting 16 years to tell the world what happened. Let them see my scars. Let them know the price of Russo's greed." "Leah?" Domenico's dark eyes focused on her with an intensity that still made her breath catch, though for different reasons now than it had 3 weeks ago. "My father died trying to expose this. The least I can do is finish what he started." She touched the necklace she still wore, the one with her father's photo. It had become her talisman. I'm ready. Good. Domenico checked his watch. It's 9 p.m. Everyone should go home, get rest. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. As the team began gathering their materials and preparing to leave, Domenico caught Leah's arm gently. Stay for a moment? She nodded, and soon they were alone in the office, the city lights filtering through the edges of the covered windows, casting the room in a dim, intimate glow. I wanted to thank you, Domenico said, leaning against his desk. Without you, none of this would be possible. The evidence, the courage to face David that night, everything. I was just trying to save lives, Leah replied. I had no idea it would lead here. That's what makes it remarkable. You acted on instinct, on compassion, with no thought for yourself. He smiled slightly, a rare expression that transformed his usually stern face. You're quite extraordinary, Leah Moretti. She felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, at the use of her first name, at the way he was looking at her. Over the past 3 weeks, their relationship had evolved in ways neither had expected. Long nights working together, shared meals at odd hours, quiet conversations about loss and justice and hope. The fear and suspicion of that first night had transformed into something else entirely, something neither of them had quite acknowledged aloud. Domenico, she started, then hesitated. After tomorrow, after Russo is arrested and this all becomes public, what happens to us? What do you mean? I mean, I was a waitress 3 weeks ago. Now I'm somehow working in your office, wearing expensive clothes you bought me, living in an apartment you're paying for. When this case is over, what am I supposed to do? Go back to Venezia? Pretend none of this happened? Domenico was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Is that what you want? To go back to your old life? I don't know if I can. Everything's different now. I'm different. Yes, you are. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. You're stronger, more confident. You found a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. Because of you. Because of all this. No, Leah. That strength was always in you. This situation just revealed it. His hand reached up, almost touching her face, then dropped. You could do anything you want now. Go to college, pursue a career, start fresh somewhere new. I'd help you with whatever you chose. And if what I want... She trailed off, not quite brave enough to finish the sentence. But Domenico understood. She could see it in his eyes, in the way his breath caught slightly. Leah, you're 25 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm nearly 40, carrying more baggage than anyone should have to bear. You deserve better than... Don't tell me what I deserve, she interrupted, finding her courage. Don't make decisions for me. I'm not a child, Domenico. And I'm not naive. I know exactly who you are, what your world involves, and I'm still here. Because you were forced to be. I stopped being forced 2 weeks ago. I could have left. You offered me protection for my family and enough money to start over anywhere I wanted. I stayed because I chose to. The air between them felt charged, electric. Domenico's careful control was slipping, and Leah could see the man beneath the armor, someone who had been alone for so long he'd forgotten how to let anyone in. If we cross this line, he said quietly, there's no going back. My life is complicated, dangerous. People I care about become targets. People you care about are already targets. David, Sophia, my family. We're all at risk because of this case. That doesn't change whether we... And she gestured between them, unable to quite name what this was. Leah. Her name was almost a plea. I can't be what you need. You already are. And then, before either could overthink it further, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question being asked. But when Domenico's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened into something that felt like an answer to a question neither had known how to ask. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Domenico rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably, Leah agreed. But I'm done playing it safe. Your father would not approve of this. My father would want me to be happy. And Domenico? For the first time in years I am. They stood like that for a long moment, the city quiet around them, the weight of tomorrow's revelations temporarily forgotten. Two people who had been brought together by tragedy, finding something unexpected in the darkness. A sharp knock on the door broke the moment. Vincent's voice called through. Boss, we have a problem. Domenico and Leah separated quickly, though not quickly enough to hide the flush on Leah's cheeks or the slight disarray of Domenico's usually perfect hair. If Vincent noticed when they opened the door, he was professional enough not to comment. "What is it?" Domenico asked. "All business again. Russo just left his penthouse with 6 suitcases. He's heading to Teterboro Airport. Private jet is being fueled now." "He's running," Marco said, appearing behind Vincent. "Tonight." Domenico's jaw clenched. "Contact the DA immediately. We need those warrants issued now, not tomorrow morning." "It's 9:30 at night," Margaret protested, having rushed back when she heard the commotion. "Judges don't issue arrest warrants at this hour without extraordinary circumstances." "Then we make it extraordinary." Domenico pulled out his phone, dialing a number. "This is Valenti. I need to speak to District Attorney Morrison, now. I don't care if she's at a dinner party. Tell her Antonio Russo is fleeing the country, and if she wants the case of her career, she needs to act in the next hour." While he spoke with increasing urgency to whoever was on the other end, Leah felt her heart racing. After 3 weeks of careful preparation, everything was suddenly accelerating out of control. "What can we do?" she asked Vincent. "We? Nothing. This is law enforcement territory now." But Vincent was already typing on his phone, coordinating something. "However, Russo's plane can't take off if there's a security issue at the airport." "What kind of security issue?" Vincent's smile was sharp, the kind that requires all private departures to be temporarily grounded, while authorities investigate a potential threat. "Should buy us at least 2 hours. Is that legal?" Leah asked. "It's necessary," Domenico said, having finished his call. "DA Morrison is contacting Judge Williams now. If she can convince him, we'll have warrants within the hour. But Russo can't leave American soil before then." The next 90 minutes were the longest of Leah's life. They stayed in the office, everyone too wired to even consider leaving. Phones rang constantly. Updates came in fragments. Judge Williams had agreed to review the evidence. Russo's plane was indeed grounded, though his lawyers were already filing complaints. The DA's office was mobilizing a team to execute the arrest warrants the moment they were signed. At 11:17 p.m., Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, then looked up with a fierce smile. "We have them. Arrest warrants for Antonio Russo on 14 counts of manslaughter, conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Additional warrants for 3 city officials who took payments to bury the investigation." The office erupted in restrained celebration. This wasn't over yet, but it was a crucial victory. "NYPD is moving on Russo now," Vincent reported, watching something on his laptop. "They've got him at the airport. He's being taken into custody." David Torres, who had been silent throughout the tense waiting period, finally spoke. "It's really happening. After 16 years, it's finally happening." "It's happening," Domenico confirmed. "And tomorrow the world is going to know exactly what Antonio Russo did." But even in that moment of triumph, Leah felt a chill of unease. Men like Russo didn't go down easily, and they rarely went down alone. The next morning, the news broke like a tsunami. Every major outlet ran the story. Prominent real estate developer Antonio Russo arrested for the deaths of 14 children in a 2009 arson. The Villa Rosa case, long forgotten by most of the city, was suddenly on everyone's lips. Domenico had arranged for a press conference at 10 a.m. Leah stood backstage at the hotel conference room, her hands trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. Through the curtain she could hear the crowd of reporters, the clicking of cameras, the buzz of anticipation. "You don't have to do this," Domenico said quietly, standing beside her. "David can speak alone. Or just the lawyers." "No." Leah straightened her shoulders. "My father's evidence helped make this possible. He deserves to have his story told. He'd be proud of you." "I hope so." She touched her necklace again, that familiar gesture of seeking strength. "I'm terrified." "I know. But you're going to be brilliant." Domenico's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "I'll be right there with you." And he was. When they walked out to face the wall of cameras and shouted questions, Domenico stood slightly behind her, a solid, steady presence. David was on her other side, his scars visible in the bright lights, a testament to the price of Russo's greed. Margaret Chen spoke first, laying out the legal case in clear, precise terms. Then David told his story, what it was like to be a child in Villa Rosa, what he remembered of the night of the fire, how he'd spent 16 years seeking justice. His voice cracked when he spoke about the friends who didn't survive, about Giuliana Valenti who pushed him through a window to safety. Then it was Leah's turn. "My name is Leah Moretti," she began, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. My father, Michael Moretti, was the electrician who worked on Villa Rosa in 2009. He discovered that the building had been deliberately sabotaged to create a fire hazard. He tried to warn the orphanage directors. He tried to report it to his supervisors. And when the fire happened anyway, he collected evidence to prove it wasn't an accident. She held up copies of her father's documentation, the photographs and schematics that had been hidden for 13 years. My father was planning to bring this evidence to the district attorney in January 2010. He never made it to that meeting. He died of what was ruled a heart attack at age 41. Leah's voice grew stronger, fueled by anger and grief and determination. I believe my father was silenced because he tried to do the right thing, because he cared more about those children's lives than about his own safety. And today, 16 years late, he's finally getting the justice he deserved. The questions came fast and furious after that. Miss Moretti, how did you discover this evidence? Mr. Valenti, what's your connection to this case? David, what do you want to see happen to Antonio Russo? They answered what they could, deflected what they couldn't. Through it all, Leah was aware of Domenico's presence beside her, supportive without being overbearing, protective without diminishing her own voice. After 45 minutes, Margaret finally called an end to the press conference. As they left the stage, Leah felt simultaneously drained and energized. It was done. The truth was out there now, impossible to bury or ignore. You were perfect, Domenico said as they reached the private room backstage. I was shaking the whole time. No one could tell. You were poised, articulate, compelling. His hand touched her back, a gesture that would have seemed professional to anyone watching but felt intimate to her. Your father would have been incredibly proud. Before Leah could respond, Vincent appeared, his expression grave. We've got a situation. Russo posted bail 2 hours ago. What? Domenico's voice was sharp. On 14 counts of manslaughter? What judge would grant bail? Judge Patricia Hartley, who our research just discovered received a very generous campaign donation from one of Russo's shell companies 3 years ago. He bought his way out, Marco said disgustedly. It gets worse, Vincent continued. Russo's lawyers are already filing motions to suppress evidence, claiming illegal search and seizure, procedural violations. You name it. They're going to fight this with everything they have. We expected that, Margaret said, though her confident tone had dimmed slightly. The case is still solid. Is it? Domenico challenged. If he got to one judge, how many others has he compromised? How many officials are on his payroll that we don't know about? The room fell into troubled silence. They'd won a battle today, but the war was far from over. There's more, Vincent said reluctantly. Russo gave a statement to the press outside the courthouse. He claims this is all a vendetta by you, Domenico. Says you're using your influence to frame an innocent businessman because of an old grudge. He's painting himself as the victim. Of course he is, David said bitterly. Men like him always do. Leah felt a surge of anger. We have evidence. We have testimony. We have the truth. And he has money, connections, and lawyers who specialize in creating reasonable doubt, Margaret said. Don't misunderstand. I believe we'll win, but it's going to be a long, ugly fight. How long? Leah asked. Trials like this? Could be a year before we get a verdict. Maybe more with appeals. A year. Leah thought about her mother, still fighting her illness in the hospital. Her brother Danny trying to focus on finishing high school, while reporters camped outside their apartment. David, forced to relive his trauma publicly while Russo walked free on bail, all of them in limbo, waiting for justice that might never fully come. I need some air, she said abruptly, pushing past the group toward the exit. She found herself on the hotel's roof terrace, the cold November wind biting but refreshing after the stuffy conference room. The city sprawled below her, millions of people going about their lives, unaware or uncaring about Villa Rosa, about 14 dead children, about her father's sacrifice. She heard footsteps behind her but didn't turn. She knew who it was before he spoke. It's not over, Domenico said, joining her at the railing. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I know it's not over, Leah interrupted. I guess I just hoped that today would feel more like closure. Instead, it feels like we just opened Pandora's box. In a way we did. But Leah, what we did today matters. The truth is out there now. The city knows what happened. Even if Russo somehow escapes legal consequences, which I won't let happen, his reputation is destroyed. He'll never be able to show his face in polite society again. Is that enough? Is social embarrassment enough justice for 14 dead children? No, Domenico admitted. But it's something. And we're not done fighting, not by a long shot. Leah turned to face him, studying the determination in his eyes. Why does this matter so much to you? I mean, I understand about Juliana, but you could have moved on years ago. You could have built your life and tried to forget. Why spend 16 years on this? Domenico was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the city. Because the night of the fire, I was supposed to visit Juliana. It was her birthday the next day, and I'd promised to bring her a present. But I got caught up in work, in proving myself to the people I worked for. I told myself I'd go the next day instead. His voice cracked slightly. She died that night, and the last conversation we had was me breaking a promise. So no, I couldn't move on. I couldn't forget. Because if I did, if I let her memory fade and let her death remain just another accident, then what did her life mean? What did any of their lives mean? Leah felt tears streaming down her face. For him, for Juliana, for her father, for all of them. I understand. My father's last words to me were, "Be good for your mother while I'm gone." Just that. Nothing profound. And then he never came back. So we carry them with us, Domenico said, turning to her. Your father, my sister, all of them. We carry them and we fight for them and we make sure the world remembers they mattered. Even if it takes a year, even if Russo fights us every step of the way, even then, for however long it takes. His hand found hers on the railing, fingers intertwining. But Leah, you don't have to be part of this fight. You've done enough. You can step back. Let the lawyers handle it from here. Live your life. Is that what you want? For me to step back? What I want, Domenico said carefully, is for you to be safe and happy. But what I hope is that you'll stay. Not just for the case, but... He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. But for you, Leah completed. That's what you mean, isn't it? I have no right to ask that of you. You're not asking. I'm choosing. She moved closer, until they were standing inches apart. Domenico, in 3 weeks you've given me more purpose than I've had in years. You've shown me that I'm capable of more than just surviving day to day, and you've made me feel, she searched for the right word, seen, like I matter beyond just being someone's daughter or sister or employee. You do matter, more than you know. Then let me stay. Let me be part of this fight. And let me be part of, she gestured between them, whatever this is. Domenico's hand came up to cup her face gently. This is me falling for someone I have no business falling for. Someone too young, too good, too innocent for my world. I stopped being innocent the night I saw that device under your car. And I stopped being too young to make my own choices a long time ago. Leah leaned into his touch. So the only question is, do you want this? Do you want me? Instead of answering with words, Domenico kissed her. Not the tentative kiss of last night, but something deeper, more certain. A promise and a commitment and an acknowledgement of everything unspoken between them. When they broke apart, the city seemed brighter somehow, despite the gathering clouds. We should get back, Domenico said eventually, though he made no move to leave. Vincent will be wondering where we went. Let him wonder. Leah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks despite everything. Just a few more minutes. They stood together on that rooftop, two people who had found each other in the worst possible circumstances, holding on to something good in the midst of chaos. Below them, the city continued its endless motion. Somewhere, Antonio Russo was plotting his defense. Somewhere, judges were being influenced and witnesses were being intimidated and lawyers were preparing for war. But up here, for these few stolen moments, there was just Leah and Domenico, together against whatever came next. When this is all over, Leah said quietly, when Russo is convicted and justice is served and we can finally breathe, what then? Then, Domenico said, we figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Leah echoed. I like the sound of that. As the sun began its descent toward evening, they finally returned inside, hands linked, ready to face whatever battles lay ahead. The fight for justice would be long and difficult. Antonio Russo had resources and connections they were still discovering. The trial would be grueling, public, emotionally devastating, but they would face it together. Leah and Domenico, the waitress and the boss, brought together by tragedy and bound by something neither had expected to find. And in the end, though the road would be harder than either imagined, justice would prevail. Not just for Juliana or Michael or the other victims, but for everyone who had ever been silenced by power and greed. The truth was out now, and truth, once revealed, could never be fully buried again. 10 months later, on a warm September afternoon, Leah stood outside the courthouse as news crews captured the moment. The jury had deliberated for 3 days before returning their verdict. Antonio Russo, guilty on all 14 counts of manslaughter, plus conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Beside her stood David Torres, finally able to smile without pain shadowing it. Sophia was there too, and Margaret Chen, and all the others who had fought so hard for this moment. And Domenico, his hand in hers, steady and strong as he'd been through every difficult day of the trial. "Justice," David said quietly, tears streaming down his scarred face. Finally, justice. As they descended the courthouse steps together, facing the cameras and the questions and the chaos, Leah thought about her father, about how he'd tried to do the right thing and paid the ultimate price, about how his evidence hidden for so long had finally served its purpose. She thought about Giuliana Valenti, the 12-year-old girl who pushed a boy through a window to save his life, about the 13 other children whose names were now known, whose lives were now remembered, and she thought about how sometimes the most important moments in life come from a single impulsive choice, like screaming at a dangerous man not to start his car. Everything that followed had been difficult, painful, frightening, but it had also been necessary, and in the process, she'd found not just justice for the past, but hope for the future. "Ready?" Domenico asked as they reached their car, the crowd of reporters still calling out questions behind them. "For what comes next?" Leah smiled, squeezing his hand. "Always." And together they drove away from the courthouse, leaving the past behind and moving toward whatever future they would build together. It wouldn't be easy. Domenico's world would always carry complications. There would be challenges, obstacles, difficult choices ahead, but they would face them together. And that, Leah had learned, made all the difference.